I used to think time was the great equalizer, that if I gave enough of it, years, moments, pieces of myself, something solid would eventually form beneath our feet. Something earned. Something permanent. I thought presence mattered. That showing up, every day, counted for more than the blood we didn't share. But I was wrong. Time is not a bridge. It's a test. And somewhere along the line, without me even noticing, I started failing it. It started with silence. Not the dramatic kind, not the shouting then ignoring kind. No, this silence was quieter, colder. The kind that seeps into the corners of your life without making a sound. The kind that begins with unread messages in the group chat, plans made without you, glances exchanged across the table that don't include your eyes. There were dinners where they spoke in shorthand I didn't understand, inside jokes I hadn't been there to witness. I'd ask what they meant and get half smiles, eye rolls, or worse, nothing. My questions floated unanswered over steaming plates of food I'd paid for. They never told me I didn't belong. They didn't have to. The room already knew. I noticed the shift in decisions first. Vacations were suddenly booked around my work schedule. Not with it. Karen would tell me after the fact, "We figured you were busy, so we just went ahead." Small things at first. But small things grow when they're left unchecked. Hotel reservations, college visits, parent-teacher meetings, all passed over me like water over glass. And still I kept paying. Every insurance bill, every heating repair, every cracked screen on a phone I didn't use, every last-minute school expense they forgot to mention. I kept paying, because I thought that's what love looked like. Quiet, consistent, unseen. I thought one day they'd look up and realize who kept the lights on. But they never looked. Not really. I became background, essential but invisible. The man who fixed the Wi-Fi. The one who knew how to reset the router. The driver, the lifter, the wallet. And when I dared to point it out, to ask why I hadn't been included in a choice that affected the whole house, Karen would tilt her head, offer a soft, "Oh, I thought we talked about that." We hadn't. We never did. The decisions had already been made. I was just being notified. Brought in at the end to fund it. Still, I let it go. Because what was the alternative? Fight? Argue? Become the villain in a story they already weren't interested in hearing? I told myself it was a phase. A rough patch. Teenagers are hard. Blended families are harder. I told myself if I just kept showing up, they'd meet me halfway. That time would carve space for me in the story of this house. But time didn't build me a place. It just made it harder to leave. And then came that night. A Thursday. Rain on the windows. The kind of evening that would have passed without memory, except for what was said. Karen had made pasta. Her way of softening the mood when the week had been long. We were sitting around the table. My stepson had just come back from university. I hadn't seen him in weeks. His hair was longer. He'd put on muscle. He looked like a man now, one I didn't recognize. We talked about classes, about professors. I asked questions. He gave answers short and clipped like he was performing a task. And then Karen, trying to make a joke, trying to say something warm, laughed and said, "People always assume you're his real dad. You know, it's the way you both walk." She smiled at me, a soft one. Maybe she meant it as a compliment. But he didn't take it that way. He put his fork down. Not harshly, deliberately. His eyes locked onto mine. And he said it. Flat. "Icy. Stop acting like my dad." The room went still. No dramatic music. No thunder. Just quiet. So quiet I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I turned to Karen. Waiting. Not for anger, not for outrage, just correction. Clarification. Something. And she didn't even flinch. "He's right," she said, her tone gentle, like she was trying to make peace between two children. "You've always been there, and we appreciate it. But that doesn't mean you get to overstep." Overstep? I felt it like a gut punch, like a line being drawn. Permanent ink, no room to erase. I had stepped in, stepped up, stepped forward. I had stepped over broken promises left by his biological father and replaced them with consistency, stability, care. But now I was being told I had gone too far. Overstep. That was the word she chose. I sat back in my chair and said nothing. I chewed my food like it wasn't turning to paste in my mouth. I nodded as if I understood. But something inside me fractured. Because that was the moment I understood the truth. I was conditional. A temporary fixture. A stand-in. A man they were willing to use but never fully accept. Karen had made her choice in that moment. And so had he. I wasn't Dad. I was a role player. A helper. A man who had never earned a place, only rented one. And the lease was expiring. What hurt most wasn't his words. It wasn't the sharp, deliberate tone. It was her agreement. Her calm, measured, effortless agreement. After all the years. After the dentist appointments, the midnight drives, the winter tires installed, the birthday gifts wrapped carefully because he never told me what he wanted. After the fights I mediated. After the jobs I worked, extra hours, side contracts, sacrificing my own sleep to make sure his path was smooth. After it all, I was told, without hesitation, that I had overstepped. That's the part people never see. Not the slap in the face, but the slow turning of the back. Not the scream, but the shrug. The soft, polite betrayal that tells you, "Thank you, but we never needed you." I finished my meal in silence. He looked satisfied. Karen looked relieved, like some tension had finally been aired. I looked down at my plate and thought about every bill I had paid that month. Every automatic transfer I had set up. Every obligation I had carried alone. Quietly, without complaint. I had been told what I was. I just hadn't been ready to hear it. But now I heard it loud and clear. They had drawn their line. And whether they knew it or not, they had just freed me. I didn't speak a word that night. Not when the plates were cleared. Not when Karen tried to offer some soft attempt at conversation. Not even when my stepson left the table with a satisfied smirk on his face, trailing the scent of finality behind him like cologne. I moved in silence, washed my own dish, and left the rest. Walked upstairs without a glance back. Closed the door to my office. Locked it. I sat there, staring at nothing, listening to the familiar hum of a house I had built with my labor. A house now full of conversations I was no longer welcome in. And I thought, they really believe I'll keep going. That I'll keep paying, keep showing up, keep playing my part like the loyal dog I've been for 17 years. That they can strip me of dignity, of identity, and I'll still deliver my side of the bargain. But the thing about pushing a man who never complains is this. You never hear the moment he breaks. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't call a friend or seek advice. I did something far more dangerous. I agreed with them. That night, with nothing but the blue light of the monitor on my face and the weight of 17 years on my shoulders, I began to unbuild the life I had paid for. First came the tuition. My stepson was halfway through the academic year. I had set up monthly transfers, direct, automatic, efficient. I opened the portal and with a few clicks, turned off the pipeline. I watched the numbers stop flowing. Next was the rent. The apartment he stayed in while at school was under my name. So was the lease, the utilities, the emergency fund we topped up each month. All of it fed by me. I ended it. One cancellation at a time. One click, one confirmation, one severed cord. Then came the fuel card. The grocery allowance. The little luxuries I paid for so he could focus on school. The accounts that made it easy for him to live a life of independence. Paid for by the man he refused to acknowledge. Gone. Frozen. Closed. Each step felt like removing a nail from a coffin I'd once built with hope. Each step was clarity, not cruelty. Each decision came without anger. Only the cold, sobering realization that I was no longer a part of this family. And if I was no longer a father, I was no longer obligated to act like one. The next morning, I sat across from Karen at the kitchen table. She poured coffee like it was any other day, like nothing had shifted. Her voice soft, sleepy, trusting. They're going to a movie this weekend. You don't mind giving him gas money? I sipped my coffee slowly. Let the silence stretch. No, I said. I won't. She looked up, her brow furrowing. You won't what? I won't give him anything. Not anymore. There was a pause. A beat too long. What are you talking about? I met her eyes. He told me to stop acting like his father. You agreed. So I did. I pulled back from everything. The money, the bills, the responsibilities. If I'm not a parent, I'm not a provider. Her expression shifted, confusion into something more primal. Fear. You're joking. No. I'm just listening. For once. She set her mug down. Michael, this isn't what we meant. He was upset. He said something harsh. But he meant it. So did you. I held her gaze. And now, so do I. She blinked, stunned by the calm in my voice. She expected an argument. A meltdown. She wasn't prepared for agreement. For me to fold my cards and walk away from the table, she thought I was bound to forever. You can't just stop, she whispered. I can, I said. And I have. She stood, her chair scraping against the floor. He needs you, whether he admits it or not. No, I said. He needs someone to pay for his life. He doesn't want a father. And you don't want to defend one. I finally understand that. Her eyes welled up, but not with sorrow, with panic. Because she had built her world around my support. And now it was vanishing like a tide pulling out. And I realized, in that moment, she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the loss of convenience, the collapse of a system she had come to depend on, even if she never truly valued it. I left her standing there and went to work. That week passed slowly. I watched them all from a distance. Karen grew restless. Her texts grew longer, asking about due dates, just checking on things she used to ignore. My stepson remained oblivious or pretended to be. He came and went with the same arrogance, the same entitled strut. He hadn't felt the effects yet. But consequences have a way of arriving all at once. It was Sunday when the first domino fell. He walked into the kitchen, phone in hand, eyes wide. Mom, my tuition thing isn't going through. I got an email. It says the school's putting a hold on my account. Karen looked at me. Her face already knew the answer. She didn't speak. I did. I canceled it. His head snapped toward me. What? I stayed seated. Calm. Still. You said I'm not your father. I'm respecting that. Which means I'm no longer responsible for your education. He laughed. A dry, ugly sound. You're kidding. No. That's not how this works. You can't just. I cut him off. I can. And I did. If I don't have a say in this house, I won't carry the weight of it. Karen reached for my arm, desperate. Michael, please. But I pulled away. Not with anger. With finality. I've played my part. You all made it clear I'm not wanted as a parent. So I'm done pretending I am. He stood there, mouth open, fury climbing into his throat. You're ruining everything. No, I said. I'm just letting go. You said the words. I'm just honoring them. And then I stood, walked past them both. Not a single nerve in my body told me to turn back. Because I knew once a man is no longer respected, nothing he gives is clean. That evening, my stepson called his biological father. I heard the voice through the door, muffled, strained. Can you pay for it? I need the tuition. No, now. They won't let me register. Hello? Hello? Silence. He called again. Same result. The ghost of a man who only appeared for birthdays and holidays had vanished into smoke. Just like always. The safety net was gone. And for the first time, he understood that words cost more than he thought. It didn't take long. 3 days after I pulled the plug, the entire structure they had built, their certainty, their smug confidence that I would keep showing up no matter what, began to fall apart. It began with the landlord. The apartment was under my name. The lease, the utilities, the online rent portal, all of it tied back to me. I had set it up when he first moved off campus. I even co-signed to get him in the building. He told me he wanted space to grow, to learn to be independent, and I made that independence possible. Quietly, without applause. But that was before. Now, the automatic rent payments had stopped. I'd taken my name off the lease the moment I was legally able. His name was the only one left. His responsibility. His reality. And it came fast. That Wednesday afternoon, Karen stood in the doorway, clutching an envelope with a familiar red stamp. "Past due," she said, as if the words were foreign on her tongue. "From his landlord." I didn't even look up from the sink where I was rinsing my coffee mug. "Tell him to pay it." Her voice cracked. "Michael, please. Just for this month." "No. You can't just abandon him." "I'm not abandoning him. I'm respecting him. He told me I wasn't his father. You backed him. This is what he wanted: distance. Independence. Let him own it." She didn't argue after that. Not out loud. But in the silence between us, her panic had started to take root. I could feel it growing in the room with every unpaid bill, every ignored email, every click of a card declined. The next day, my stepson came home. Not to visit. Not with warmth. But with noise. He came in loud, throwing his bag on the floor, slamming cabinets, huffing like a man who'd been wronged. I sat on the couch, reading. I didn't speak. He did. "You're seriously just going to leave me hanging like this?" I turned a page. He stormed closer. "Tuition's still frozen. They're threatening to drop me. And now my landlord says I have 5 days or I'm out. Sounds like you've got a lot to handle." He glared at me. "I'm serious. I can't pay for this. You know that. And yet, you still said I wasn't your father." He clenched his jaw. I was angry. People say things when they're mad. "No," I said, folding the book shut. "People reveal things when they're mad." He stood there, waiting for the backpedal. The rescue. The return of the man he'd used for 17 years. It didn't come. I stood and walked past him without a word. He didn't follow. That night, Karen sat on the edge of the bed with her back to me. "He's scared," she said, her voice small. "He didn't think you'd actually pull away." "I know. You've always been the one he could count on. Always." "I know. Then how can you watch him fall like this?" I turned to her, the weight of it all in my throat. "Because I've spent 17 years giving him everything. And all I got in return was silence. Indifference. Contempt. I won't keep feeding the hand that slaps me." She wiped her face. "He's not ready. He's old enough to humiliate me in front of you without blinking. That means he's old enough to face what comes next." She didn't speak after that, and I didn't reach for her. The next morning, he left. No goodbyes, just the sound of the door slamming, his car starting, tires peeling out of the driveway like he was escaping something. But what he didn't realize was this: there's no escape when the problem is who you've chosen to be. Over the next week, the ripples turned into waves. First, the college called the house. Left a voicemail Karen didn't want me to hear, but I did. "Final notice," the voice said. "Non-payment. Dismissal will be effective by the end of the month." Then came the landlord's formal notice. Printed, certified, delivered by hand. And then the card. The one I had shut off. He tried to use it again. At a gas station. For $43.28. Declined. He texted me that time. Just one word. "Seriously." I didn't reply. He followed up with a call. I let it ring. Then he texted again. "I'll talk. Just, can we fix this?" I read it. Let it sit there. Let it rot in the silence he had once fed me with. Karen came to me that night. "He's not sleeping," she said. "He's barely eating." I shrugged. "He wanted to live without me. Now he gets to." She flinched. "This is punishment." "No, this is consequences." "There's a difference?" "There is," I said. "Punishment is about making someone hurt. Consequences are what happen when they push someone away and expect them to stay." She stared at me, and for the first time in years, I saw her face fall without defense. No clever reply. No justification. Just the slow realization that the man she had taken for granted, the man she let her son tear down, was finally living like he believed them. They had drawn the line. I had simply stepped to my side of it. Another week passed, and then came the collapse. He came back home, not with arrogance this time, Not with anger. With nothing. No bag. No keys. Just him, standing at the door, hands shoved deep in his hoodie, face pale. I opened the door, looked at him. He didn't speak right away, just breathed, shallow, nervous. Then, they kicked me out. I waited. School too. I nodded once. He shifted. I called my dad, the real one. He chuckled bitterly. He said he can't help. He said I should have thought of that before choosing sides. I watched the words hit him even as he spoke them. He looked up, eyes red. I messed up. Yes, he had. But here's the thing no one tells you about these moments. Remorse isn't the same as responsibility. Wanting the past undone isn't the same as owning what you did. I stepped aside and let him in. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to see this through. He slumped onto the couch like a man with no bones left in his body. Karen sat beside him, brushing his shoulder, whispering things I didn't bother to hear. Eventually, he looked at me. I didn't mean it. What I said. I was angry, confused. I stayed silent. You were there for everything. You always were. Still, I said nothing. I thought you'd always be there, no matter what. I didn't think words would make you leave. And that, right there, was the problem. He had believed I was permanent. That I was so desperate for approval, for belonging, that I would tolerate anything, even open humiliation, as long as I could stay near him. Near them. He believed my silence meant weakness. He didn't know it meant restraint. And restraint runs out. Karen tried to intervene, her voice trembling. Michael, please. He's trying. Can't you see that? I looked at her, then at him. His eyes were pleading, but not with understanding, with fear. He didn't want me. He wanted what I represented. A wallet, a roof, a rescuer, not a father. I stood. You told me I wasn't your dad. My voice was flat, final. You were right. He stared at me, shaking his head. No, please. I didn't mean it. You meant it enough to say it. And your mother meant it enough to agree. Karen stepped forward. He didn't know the weight of those words. But I did, I said. And I carried that weight for 17 years. The silence after that felt colder than winter. He leaned forward, head in his hands. I need help, he whispered. And there it was. The truth. Not apology. Not change. Just need. The same need that had drained me dry for years. I stepped back. No. And I left the room. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to list the sacrifices or recite the history. That wasn't what this moment was about. This was about finally living by the truth they had given me. I wasn't a father, so I would stop pretending to be one. He didn't leave the house that night. He slept on the couch or tried to. I could hear him turning over again and again, the weight of consequences pressing down harder than any blanket ever could. He didn't speak to me in the morning. Karen moved quietly around him, hands fluttering at the sink, unsure what to do with her loyalty now that it no longer had a clear place to land. I left before either of them could say a word. Drove to work in silence. No radio, no distractions. Just the hum of the tires beneath me and the voice in my head saying, this is what the end looks like. Not loud, not explosive, just done. I didn't ask where he went that day. I didn't care. I had learned not to ask questions that no one wants to answer. Karen said nothing either. She moved through the kitchen like a woman pretending it was all a bad dream. I think, deep down, she believed I'd snap out of it, that I'd return to the way I used to be, that I'd pay a few overdue bills, drive him back to campus, and pretend like none of it happened. She didn't understand. This wasn't a tantrum. This was not a punishment. This was my departure. A quiet one, but permanent. He stayed 2 more nights, then left. No words, just a text to his mother. I'll figure something out. Don't ask him for anything. He made himself clear. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to offer. No money, no excuses, no second chances. I had already given him everything a man can give who is not allowed to belong. Days passed, then a week, then 2. I began to notice the change almost immediately. Not in him, but in the house. The weight lifted. The tension dissolved. I started sleeping. Not deep, peaceful sleep, but sleep without grinding my teeth, without waking to dread. My chest didn't feel like it was clamped in a vice. The air felt cleaner. Karen noticed too. She didn't say it, but I saw it in her eyes. She started reaching for me in small ways. A hand on my shoulder, a question about my day, a softness that hadn't been there in years. I answered politely. I was cordial, but the warmth was gone, because I had seen something I couldn't unsee. Not just in my stepson. In her. She had chosen silence. That was what made everything possible. Her silence, her stillness, her refusal to challenge the boy she'd raised, even as he erased me with a sentence. She hadn't defended me, not when it mattered. So I began to pull back from her too. Not with cruelty, with consistency. If I wasn't a father, if I wasn't a husband in truth, if I was just the man who paid the bills and fixed the roof and filled the freezer, then I would live like it. I stopped paying for things that weren't mine. I removed myself from joint accounts. I changed the Wi-Fi password and gave her a new one with a note. This is yours. Don't share it. I unsubscribed from the meal kits she used for her sons. I canceled the Hulu subscription they all watched, the one under my name. I stopped stocking the fridge with their favorites. At first, Karen didn't say anything. She thought it would pass. Then she started asking questions. Did the meal kit forget our box? Why can't I log in to the streaming accounts? Did you mean to remove your name from the utility bills? Yes, I meant it. She sat me down one night, her voice tight with worry masked as reason. You're pulling away, she said. I'm not pulling away, I said. I'm returning to what I was told I am. A non-father, a non-partner, a man without rights in this home. Her face twisted. You know I didn't mean that. No, you didn't say it. You just stood there while he did. Silence. You let him gut me in front of you, and you did nothing. And now you want normal? You want warmth? You want me to play the part again? I shook my head. You don't get to lose me and keep the benefits. That landed like a slap. She started to cry. I didn't comfort her. She said it wasn't fair, that I was being cruel, withholding, punishing. I said, this isn't punishment. This is a mirror. You're seeing how you've lived, without me, but funded by me. Now the funding is gone. Now you live in the truth. She begged me to talk to him, said he was lost, that he needed guidance, that he was struggling. He has a father, I said. Let him struggle there. But you were the real father. No, I said. That's the lie we told ourselves. The truth is, I was just the man who filled the gap. And once the gap was closed, I became disposable. She didn't argue, because we both knew it was true. Over the next month, the silence between us grew. Not sharp, not hateful, just wide, empty, like a house stripped of furniture. We went about our lives like polite strangers. I paid my half. I did what was legally required. I never raised my voice. I never threw the past in her face. But I also never returned to the place she hoped I'd stand again. Because I knew now, there are roles you can't step back into once you've been forced out of them. Being a father, being a partner, being the man who carries everything in silence. Those things only work if the people around you acknowledge the weight. She asked one last time, the night before he was supposed to meet with a college counselor to see if re-enrollment was possible. Will you go with him? She asked. No. Even just to talk? No. She looked down at her hands, her voice barely audible. I never thought you'd stop loving him. And I said the one thing I hadn't allowed myself to say until that moment. I haven't. She looked up. I still love the boy I raised. But he's not a boy anymore. And love isn't a reason to stay where you're not respected. The next morning, I wasn't there when they left. I didn't ask how it went. I didn't ask where they went for lunch afterward. I didn't ask anything, because it was no longer my place. 2 months later, my stepson moved into a small apartment near campus. I didn't help. I didn't offer to cover the deposit or co-sign the lease. He asked once indirectly, An awkward phone call full of hesitations and half-formed phrases. I listened. When he stopped speaking, I said, "I hope you're well." Then I hung up. That was the last time we spoke. Karen and I stayed in the same house for 6 more months. By the end of it, we were like co-workers in a company that had downsized but refused to admit it. I told her she could stay. I'd move out. She said nothing. She didn't fight it. I packed my things quietly. No dramatic exit. No tears. Just one man closing the door on a house he had built, but never truly belonged in. I left her the keys. Left the streaming passwords. Left the freezer stocked one last time. And I left with one truth. I had given everything. Not money. Not time. My identity. My presence. My name, even if they never used it. I gave them everything. And when they told me I was nothing, I believed them. That belief saved me. Because now, for the first time in 17 years, I no longer ask what I'm worth to someone else. I no longer beg to be seen. I only ask this: if a man sacrifices everything for a family that won't claim him, if he protects, provides, endures, and they erase him in one sentence, one silence, one refusal to defend, was he ever family? Or was he just a body carrying their lives while they waited for someone more convenient? You tell me, was I wrong to leave? Or had they left me long before I finally walked out that door?